Hi, boys and girls. So this next chapter is a little bit longer, so I have to cut it into two videos. I will have the second one posted right away as soon as the first one is done, so you guys will get the whole chapter. Alright, so the 16th chapter is called Ditching the Darlings. Alex and Connor stepped through the beam of light and left the witch's castle in the land of Oz behind. They waited as the words from the new story built an entirely new world around them. The Tin Woodman, Red, Mother Goose, and Lester arrived a moment later and observed their newest location in wonder. "Extraordinary," the Wood Tinman said. "I've never seen a place like this." "It's spectacular," Red said and placed a hand over her heart. "Look at all the elegant buildings, the lamps, the paved streets. I wasn't expecting Neverland to be so sophisticated." "Guys, this isn't Neverland," Connor said. "We're in London." They were standing in a small square park bordered by trees and streets and rows of tasteful townhouses. It was very late and all the street lamps were lit. The twins were very amused by how much the classic English neighborhood enchanted their friends. The Tin Woodman and Red didn't care what this place was called. It was still just as marvelous and foreign as anything else they might have seen. "Hello, London," Mother Goose said. "Boy, we've had some good times here, haven't we, Lester?" Lester nodded with large eyes. He remembered things very differently. Connor picked up the copy of Peter Pan and tucked it safely into Lester's saddle. A horse and buggy passed them on the street. The driver wore a tall top hat and had a thick mustache. Red and the Tin Woodman gave the driver a friendly curtsy and bow. He stared at them very strangely, as if his mind was playing tricks on him, and continued down the street without acknowledging them. "What year does this story take place?" Mother Goose asked. "Is it before or after the Great Fire of London? Purely curious, not that I had anything to do with it." "The early 1900s, Alex said. "Mother Goose, have you been in this story before?" Red asked. "London is the city in the other world, and it's where this story begins, just like Kansas," Alex explained. "Then I'm afraid to ask how we get to Neverland," Red said, already dreading it. "Hurricane, earthquake, sinkhole?" "Of course not," said Connor. "That would be ridiculous. We fly to Neverland." "Fly what?" Mother Goose asked. "Mother Goose, I can't believe how unfamiliar you are with these stories," said Connor. "After all the time you've spent in the other world, how do you not know about Peter Pan?" "I was too busy spreading stories with your grandmother and other fairies to read any of them," she said. "So who is this Pan fellow? Is he a pilot?" "Right now, he's our only hope in finding and stopping Uncle Lloyd," Alex said. "Come with me, we've got to look for him." Alex hurried down the street and the others followed behind her. She carefully looked over every townhouse they passed. Occasionally she would climb over a gate and peer through a window to see inside the house. "What are we looking for?" the Tin Woodman asked. "The Darlings' house," Alex said. "Peter visits the Darlings' nursery in the beginning of the book. I should know it when I see it. Everybody quiet!" Without warning, Alex pushed her brother and Red into the flower bed and dragged the Tin Woodman, Mother Goose, and Lester behind the pillars of the porch where they were inspecting. A man and a woman emerged from the townhouse across the street. The man promptly locked the door of their home and escorted the woman down the street. They were dressed up in a suit and gown and were in mid-conversation. "I'm telling you, George, I know what I saw," the woman said. "Mary, your imagination has run off with your mind," George laughed. "I wasn't imagining it," Mary insisted. "Last night, after I read the children a bedtime story, as I sat sewing while the children fell asleep, I saw him. A boy outside the window of the nursery." "My dear, there is nothing outside the window of the nursery but air," George said. "Then he was floating," Mary said. "Nana saw him too. She snapped the window shut and he disappeared." "Imagine that," George said. "Don't mock me, George. I wouldn't say such things if they weren't true. Anyway, he left his shadow behind. I put it in a drawer for safekeeping. I do suppose he'll be coming back for it." "His shadow?" George couldn't believe the words coming out of his wife's mouth. "Mary, I've heard enough. You've been cooped up with the children for far too long, and you need a break. Now let's enjoy the rest of our night without any more talk of such nonsense. I beg you." George and Mary turned the corner and disappeared around the street. That wife sounds like a loon," Mother Goose whispered. "No, she's telling the truth," Alex said. "Any minute now, Peter Pan and a pixie named Tinkerbell will appear at the windows of the nursery. I have to admit, I'm excited to see them." Everyone stared at the tall windows at the very top of the townhouse and waited for the boy and the pixie to appear. They waited and waited, but nothing was happening. They watched the windows until their necks started to ache. The others had seats on the steps of the house, but Alex stayed put. She wasn't going to miss anything. "Any minute now," Alex said cheerfully. "We'll grab him, ditch the darlings, and head to Neverland." A couple of long hours later, there was still no sign of Peter Pan or Tinker Bell. They had heard a couple of voices, and everyone's heart jumped. This was it. They quickly resumed their positions behind the pillars and in the flower bed. However, it was only George and Mary returning to the street on their way home. "This isn't right," Alex said. "They're not supposed to be back yet. Peter should have taken the Wendy, Michael, and John and taken them to Neverland by now." As Mr. and Mrs. Darling walked up the front steps to their townhouse, Connor felt a soft breeze. He looked down the street and saw a young boy peeking out from behind the neighboring house's chimney. He flew from one chimney to the next, creeping closer to the Darlings' home. "Guys," Connor whispered, "look, it's Peter." They all turned in the direction Connor was pointing and saw the boy who wouldn't grow up himself. He had messy auburn hair, rosy cheeks, and clothes made out of green and brown leaves. Peter hovered behind the chimney of the Darlings' neighbor's house until George and Mary went inside their home. As soon as they shut the door, he dashed to the windows of the nursery, all the while never casting a shadow on anything below him. Alex pointed out the window, and it locked before Peter got there. He pulled on the window, but it wouldn't budge. He grew very worried and looked inside. When he didn't see anything moving, he lightly knocked on the glass. "Tink," Peter whispered. "Tink, are you in there? Did the woman trap you with my shadow?" When there was no response, Peter's posture sank and he dropped a few feet in altitude. He quickly flew off into the night, searching the sky and streets around him. "After him," Alex told the others. "We can't lose him." They followed Peter on the streets below, chasing after him as though he were a loose balloon. It became increasingly difficult to keep up with him. The longer he searched, the less inclined he was to stay in line with the streets. He flew over several streets at once, jumping from neighborhood to neighborhood. "We're not going to find him at this rate," Red said. "I agree. We're rats in a pigeon chase," Mother Goose said. "Lester, fly after him." "Wait," Connor said, and something caught his eye. "Look over there." He pointed to a small park in the center of the neighborhood. Peter Pan was sitting on the very top of a statue. His face was buried in his crossed arms, and he appeared to be crying. The twins and their friends snuck into the park as quietly and quickly as they could, which was especially difficult with the Tin Woodman's heavy metal boots. "Should I say something to him?" Connor asked. "No, let me," said Alex. "I know exactly what to say." She tiptoed right up to the statue where he was seated. Peter was so upset he didn't hear her coming. "Boy, why are you crying?" Alex asked, quoting the story she knew by heart. She startled him, and Peter abruptly shot into the air. When he saw she was just a girl, he posed in midair with his hands on his hips and slowly descended to the ground. "Who are you?" Peter asked. "My name is Alex," she said, "and these are my friends." She gestured to her brother and the others, and they walked farther into the park. "Pirates!" Peter screamed when he saw them. He shielded Alex and pulled out a small dagger. "Don't worry, Alex, I shall protect you." "These aren't pirates, these are my friends," Alex said. "They aren't going to hurt anyone." "All adults are pirates," Peter said, and waved his dagger at Connor and the others. "But I'm only like a year or two older than you," Connor said. "I'm only like a year or two older than you," Peter repeated with a funny voice and ugly face. "Are you mocking me?" Connor asked. "Are you mocking me?" Peter said. "Dude, stop it. Dude, stop it. Gosh, you're immature. Gosh, you're immature." Connor was beyond annoyed and grunted heavily. "I know staying young is your thing, but you really need to grow up," he said. "I know staying young is your thing." Peter stopped mimicking him and looked at him curiously. "Wait, how did you know that?" Alex took this as an opportunity to reposition herself between Peter and the others. "We know all about you in Neverland," she said. "We were waiting for you at the Darlings' house, but you were super late. Well, later than you were supposed to be. What took you so long?" Peter put his dagger away, but continued to eye them curiously. "I was looking for Tinker Bell. She's a friend and a pixie. Last night, Tink and I were listening to Mrs. Darling read a fairy tale to the children. Mrs. Darling saw me outside the window, so I left in a hurry. I left so fast my shadow stayed behind. Usually Tink is right beside me, but I couldn't find her anywhere. I searched the entire city, but she's gone." "Do you have any idea where Tinker Bell might have gone?" Alex asked. "Would she have gone back to Neverland?" Connor asked. "No, Tink doesn't like to fly alone," Peter said sadly. "Now I'm all alone without a pixie or a shadow." "Why is the shadow such a big deal?" Connor asked. Peter looked at him as if he had insulted a family member. "A shadow is a friend that never leaves you," he said. "But yours did," Connor pointed out. It wasn't his fault, Peter said. He was hoping the darling children would wake up and their mother would read them another bedtime story. Shadows love fairy tales. A perky smile came to Red's face. Which fairy tale was it, she asked, and ran her fingers through her hair. Cinderella, Peter said. Red slumped. Oh, she said with a disappointed sigh. You didn't miss much. She dies in the end. Peter's mouth was agape, and his eyes became watery. Alex grabbed Connor's arm and pulled him aside. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, she asked. This kid is psychotic, he asked. No, about Tinkerbell, she said. It's not a coincidence she came up missing the same time her uncle entered the story. Oh, right, Connor said. Obviously Lloyd kidnapped her. He probably used her pixie dust to travel to Neverland to recruit Captain Hook. That's not all he's using Tink for, she said. Just like he used the silver shoes on the Wicked Witch, he's got to have leverage to bargain with Hook. And what does the captain want more than anything? He wants to kill Peter, Connor said, trying his best to remember the story. Uncle Lloyd's going to give Tinkerbell to Captain Hook so he can use her as bait for Peter. Precisely, Alex said. The twins quickly rejoined their friends and the age-defying boy. Peter, we know where Tinkerbell is, Connor said. Where? Peter asked. He was so excited he flew a few feet into the air and hovered right in front of the twins. A very bad man has kidnapped her, Alex said. He's using her to recruit Captain Hook and pirates into a special army he's forming. Will you take us to Neverland? With your help, we might be able to stop him and save Tinkerbell, but we won't know until we get there. Of course, Peter said. Follow me. We'll continue the rest of the chapter in the next video. I'll see you then.